I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. All right, I am so excited for this episode. It's a new exploration for me, I guess, because I'm not talking to a quilter today. I'm talking to a counselor. That's right. We're bringing in a mental health professional to give us permission to quilt. Really, that's what I wanted. No, Stephanie Breitenstein is a local counselor here in Boise, and my husband works with her. So that's how I found out about her. And I just wanted her to come on and speak to the merits of quilting and hobbies and giving yourself permission to do something that you love and just the therapeutic benefits of it. And of course, like usual, because this is a little bit chaotic of a show, we bounce around and talk about lots of different things, but just I loved our conversation. It was so great. But to talk about Stephanie a little bit more, she is a licensed clinical professional counselor, and she has a private practice here in Boise called Humble Heart Counseling. And she's licensed here in Idaho, but she also is licensed in Arizona because that's where she started her counseling journey. She's been a therapist since 2012. So she's got some time under her belt and lots of experience. And she's just so lovely and shared some resources, and I'll link them in the show notes so that you guys can have access to that. But really, it was just great to talk with her and get her take on, hobbies in general, but just quilting and how us as quilters are doing something good for our brains. So this is your permission to keep doing what you do and keep setting aside time for yourself to do the thing that brings you joy. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, and let's get into it. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today and to have a little different spin on the show. Because normally I'm talking to, quilters about their quilts and about their craft, but you're in a totally different lane. So
Yeah,
that's
I actually
exciting.
don't know much about quilting, so I appreciate being here just because I was really excited about this because I think it's really important to be able to tell people how important their hobbies are and for their mental health. And so I think it's great to be a part of it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm like looking at your sound panel behind you, and I'm like, oh, that's quilty because
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
background quilts and
Yeah.
the tiling, and yeah, so you're not too far removed from
Yeah.
it.
Here I am.
Well, um, usually we start the conversation with like, how did you get started quilting? But you're a licensed professional counselor, so I guess licensed clinical professional counselor, which is
Yeah.
like the full thing, right? So
Yeah, so it just means that I went under, or I was under a supervisor for a while and got my hours, and then I became an independent license, is what it means. So
yeah.
yeah,
Awesome. Yeah. And I met you through my husband because he works with you for his
yeah,
internship hours. And so at your private practice.
yeah. So I have Humble Heart Counseling, and Abe is one of my interns. I have a few other interns as well, and that's kind of like my way of. I love it. It's kind of selfish, to be honest, because I really enjoy the supervision aspect of it. I was talking about it earlier and how like it doesn't feel like work. So I'm always like, I love this to be able to talk and kind of collaborate. So much
Yeah.
fun. So having interns, yes, it's supposed to be for everybody, but it's definitely a little selfish as well. So
Well, I think that's okay because it's a selfishness that feeds the counseling community and helps these new counselors like get more hours and more time under their belts to be able to go out and keep spreading that good work. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's a good selfishness.
I'll take it.
Don't let me tell you whatever because
Right.
I'm not licensed in anything. Well, no, that's not true. I have a teaching degree, but I don't do it
Yeah.
anymore, so I don't count.
Well, you very much count, but here we are. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so you've been doing it since 2012 and you're licensed in both Arizona and Idaho. So did you start in Arizona and then come to Idaho?
Yeah. So I did my master's in clinical and mental health counseling at ASU.
Okay.
And then I graduated in 2012 and started working in this really small town in Arizona called Sholo, and I worked for a community counseling center, and I worked for inpatient and outpatient. And when I moved up to Idaho, I really was pretty lost. Didn't really know what. I had a new baby. My son, he was like 2 weeks when we moved up here.
Oh my gosh.
So I kind of just was in a really weird transition.
Yeah.
Got licensed here, but had no idea like where I was gonna go, what I was gonna do. My mentality was always in agency work, and
Mm,
so I thought but I had two small kids at home, so I thought I don't know if I can do that.
yeah.
Um, and so the idea of going out on my own in my own practice, I was like, oh no, you can like I don't think I'm built like that. My
Mhm.
husband was like rooting me on the whole way. He was like, yes, you absolutely can. But it wasn't until my therapist told
Mhm.
me, yeah, you should totally go into private practice that I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. So here's my husband, like just so like, all right, well, I told you so, but I'm glad somebody said it. And
Yeah.
so it's weird to me to think that at any point I didn't think I could do it. And just little by little, kind of you start with like, I'm assuming with quilting, you start with one stitch and then you make a
Hmm.
masterpiece. So I'm working on the masterpiece as I go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Building a tapestry of clients and helping
Experience.
people.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
who I was in the beginning and who I am now as a counselor, two completely different people. And I appreciate where I started because I mean, I had to learn through, I always say I learn best by making mistakes. And
Hmm.
so I kind of have to fail the first time. Um, but that means I'm not like afraid to start because I know I'm going to fail. So
Yeah.
might as well try.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I feel like that, I mean, that's such a valuable mindset in any circumstance. But I feel like maybe does it feel like, or maybe it doesn't anymore, but at first, like, did it feel more high stakes to you? Like, if I fail, I'm like failing a person, not just like a quilt or a painting, but a human being.
yeah. Well, see, when it comes to counseling, like there's this feeling of wanting to like, I want to, I want to fix or help, or, like I want
Mhm.
them to see me as like, um, somebody that can change their life and like
Yeah.
but when you think about that, like that's really all about me. And
Mhm.
so when I was willing to finally be like, oh, it's actually not about me, I can just show up and be me and
Mhm.
help a person wherever they're at. You stop worrying about those types of things. And so
Yeah.
I feel as though I'm incredibly lucky to be in the position I'm in, where I like get to witness people's change and get to
Mhm.
be privy to like the deepest like parts of people where they're incredibly vulnerable, and I just get to be. Sometimes I'm like, oh, like I get to be in this room. This is amazing. I love this. So
Yeah.
I feel so lucky to have my job.
Yeah. That's awesome because it does. It takes a lot of trust and vulnerability to come into a room with a person who doesn't know you really when you
Yeah,
start, and you get to show them every part of yourself,
yeah,
and just trust that like they're going to see you and hear you and not make fun of you behind your back kind of thing. It's like
hmm,
I'm sure there's things but that come up that are kind of funny or whatever, but at the same time you're just like that space is so sacred and that connection is so sacred because it is. It's like somebody coming in and giving you the scariest, hardest, most broken parts of themselves.
right. And some victories too, which is like really fun when you hear somebody and they tell you like you did it, like, and
Yeah.
it's just like I get to be excited with them and being like you have. I'm always like butterfly, like look at what you have accomplished. It's incredible. So,
Yeah. That's so cool. I love it. And, having gone through counseling myself over the last like yeah, 5 or 6 years. And, now Abe going through the whole counseling program at Boise State and just like everything I'm learning along with him. And because, I've read several of the books he's had to read, and, he
yeah.
tells me a lot of what he's learning and all the things. So it's been kind of a fun journey of digging deeper and all that.
Hmm.
But it's, it's just like so powerful. The therapeutic relationship is.
Yeah.
something so special, and there's just something so magical about it that I'm like, I want everybody to get into therapy so that they can experience it.
Ah, me
No,
too.
really, it's so great.
Yeah.
Like
And
it
what I
seems so
love,
scary.
yeah, and what I love with especially working with new counselors is
Mhm.
just this idea that you can actually like you being yourself is far more effective than you being this perfect counselor because there's this idea that I remember when I first started and I was like posing like it's like how
Mhm.
does my body, am I leaning in too much or yeah, interesting. And then all of a sudden it was like when I started bringing me into it, it was like this is I just get to like show up and like talk with you and mess up my words and be somebody that um, doesn't always know the right thing to say. And that's way more effective than me having the right thing to say all the time.
Yeah. It's like that vulnerability met with vulnerability makes more for a more powerful connection than
Yeah.
like the someone's vulnerability being met with like this stoicism or like ultra professional wall. It's like
Hmm.
you can't get anywhere with that. And even as a teacher, that was something that I had to like meet my kids where they're at, or I had to just say, I don't know sometimes because
Hmm.
they'd ask me questions and I would so tempting to be like, oh, I need to just give them an answer. But I found so much more value and I built so much more trust in those relationships when I was like, I don't know, but let me go find out. Or like, where do you think we could look to figure that out and involve them in the process of
Yeah.
learning what the answer is instead of me just telling them. And so I feel like in therapy, it's the same thing. Cause like, I think people have an idea that it's like they go in a room and this person tells them how to fix their life or tells them how to act or how to be. And it's like, no, it's different. Like, yeah, of
Right.
course there's conversation exchange, but it's not your job to tell me how to live my life, but just to like be a sounding board and let me hear myself and help me solve my own problems. And
I tell people there's this great thing where it's like you and I could both be looking out the same window. You tell me what you see, and I tell you what I see, and we're both right. So
mhm,
I love being able to walk into a room with that mentality of like, maybe we're both right. And if that's the case, right? Like, and um, I see your value, you don't see your value. And it's very true to both of us.
mhm,
But why do we choose what we choose? And so why do we choose to see things the way that we choose to see them? And it's based on like past programming, past experiences, but then essentially like beliefs are just thoughts that we practice.
mhm.
And so if that's the case, then what are you choosing to practice?
Yeah.
And then also you can change that and choose to practice something different. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That acceptance of like how much responsibility you actually do have in your own life in a good like when you can take radical acceptance of like your own self and then the freedom that comes with that and the realization of how much choice you actually have, it's like really cool. It's such a cool like epiphany to have like you can say the words and like I could tell my students and tell other people like life is a choice, life is a choice, life is a choice. But until you become aware of the choices you're making in your own life and like how it's impacting you and why you keep ending up in the same like situations or the same dynamics with people, like you're going to just keep making those choices until you
hmm,
choose to practice something else. And I feel
yeah,
like it's the same with like hobbies and crafting and the way you approach what you're doing. If you kind of get in your head about a certain way that things have to be done, and like there's lots of conversation like in my world of quilting of like the quilt police, and that's people who come on your page and they tell you how ugly your quilt is or that you're doing something wrong even though it's like totally up for interpretation, or it's like,
yeah.
well, I have an accessibility need and I'm going to do it this way because this is how I have to do it, or like there's nothing wrong with how I'm doing it, it's just different than the way you like to do it. So
What if we're both right? Like that
yeah,
should be everybody's
exactly.
mantra, right? Like, what if we're both right?
Yeah. And
That would be cool.
we can both be right and it's
Hmm.
okay. Like nothing's going to break or explode. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I love that. Like what if we're both right? Cuz that is really the truth of all of it. Is like, well, I'm right and you're right. And the fact that you're trying to tell me I'm wrong, it's like this whole thing. So thankfully that's like I don't see that as much because I'm pretty quick to like block it and not engage with it. So
Yeah.
but I know some
Yeah.
people kind of face that and it's different. But anyway, well, I'm so excited to talk about this because it comes up so much in in my podcast, in my conversations with other quilters about just like how quilting has saved them, how
Mhm.
quilting has become something that is so meaningful for their inner peace, their mental health. And there is a hashtag going around that has been for years that says quilting is my therapy. And as a hard advocate for mental health services and support, like I will never say that as like a real phrase because there's no substitute for therapy. I don't think there's therapeutic activities and I'm
Right.
going to die on that hill, but
Well, I think that quilting and any type of creativity is so important for your mental. It's almost like consider it synonymous, like with your mental health and needing to be have like a healthier view on life.
mhm,
Because when you're willing to tap into the creativity, I think of it like it's almost like this energy in which you're able to be still long enough in order to be um, given inspiration. And in
mhm,
that inspiration is when we start to like, okay, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. And it's in the silence that we are able to finally hear our next step in life. So you could be quilting, and it's very therapeutic. And then all of a sudden you have this clarity over a situation that happened with your family or, at work or whatever. Um, and so even though it might seem as though you're doing this task, you're opening up your mind for so many other things. And so it's very important.
yeah, I love that. And it was funny because I was interviewing someone a couple days ago and it came up that, she does like handwork in the mornings instead of getting on her phone and stuff. She gets up in the morning and does some hand sewing, the
Cool.
quiet and the stillness. And she's like, and I try to do some meditation before I start my hand sewing, just like, TM,
Hmm.
was it trans,
Transcendental,
trans,
transcendental meditation.
transcendental? Yeah. And she's like, I'm really bad at sitting still, but if I sit and I'm doing sewing, that's really like
Hmm.
calming for me. And I was like, well, is that, she's like, I think of it as like moving meditation. And I was like, well, is it still technically meditation or is it she was like, well, I don't know, I've like kind of come to the conclusion that it's more mindfulness than meditation. I was like, is there like what's the difference? It feels like sometimes wording can also get a little weedy too, so it's like,
Yeah.
could you speak to that, I guess?
Yeah. So meditation, it's really more about what you're comfortable, how you're comfortable saying it. So sometimes people are like, when they think of meditation, they think you're just like sitting there, like eyes closed, taking breaths. And they're like, my mind won't let me do that. And so that feels to them like that's not meditation, but essentially meditation and mindfulness meditation, like it's very similar. You could be walking and
Hmm.
just noticing what you're walking as you're walking the grass or the trees, and that's considered both mindfulness and walking meditation. And so it's just more of the way that people see it. So I might say to somebody like, have you ever tried meditation? And they'll be like, oh no, I don't do well with meditation, but I do this hand stitch and that works really well. And I'm like, well, congratulations, you meditate. It's just different, and it's more of it's just a different word, but it's very similar.
Okay.
Mindfulness can be very intentional. So I
Hmm.
think of it as like, I'm going to do everything with my left hand today.
Hmm.
Because if I do it with my left hand, I'm more thoughtful. If I dial a phone with my left hand, I'm going to be thinking about it. And so it can feel a little bit more active. But
Hmm.
when you're meditating, typically you're just being mindful of your breath.
Hmm.
And so there's all sorts of different kinds. And there's meditation for everybody or in mindfulness for everybody. Um, and so I think it's kind of fun to kind of look and see what you already do.
Hmm.
And just if you relabel it, it's no longer just something I do to calm down. It's actually you're meditating.
Yeah. That's so cool. And it is funny because it's like we want to label things, right? We need to have names for things and know what they are. But also there are a lot of things I think we do sometimes naturally. We end up finding activities that calm us down or that bring us back to like a centered space and we don't know that we can call it meditation because we've seen these like caricaturized versions of what that's supposed to look like on TV and like in movies and whatever. And again, people policing, like, no, you're not doing that right. That's not real meditation, or that's not real this, or, it's like, but I think there's so much more just from what I've gathered, like there's just so much more flexibility and fluidity with it when it comes to like, yeah, mindfulness versus meditation. It's
Right. And what I find interesting is that when you put these hard, very rigid restrictions on like what something is supposed to look like, then you have a bunch of people going around thinking they're feeling in it.
mhm,
So there's tons of people who sitting down breathing is not effective for them. And yet, and so they're just thinking, I guess I'm not good at it. People tell me this is good for me, but I
mhm,
guess since I'm not good at it, it's always something that's standing between you and worthiness, right? So always something that you think, if I could just be better at this, then my life probably would look different, as
mhm,
opposed to really seeing what your power is and like where you regenerate. That's the
mhm.
most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And I think then again, then that still speaks to the fact that like, you know, quilting and sewing is meditative. It
Mhm.
is that kind of repetitive movement of whether you're hand sewing or whether you're, we call it chain piecing, where you're just like sewing one piece after the other because you're making the same kind of like seam into the same kind of block. And so you can just keep feeding it into the machine. And that's what I've
Yeah.
been doing for the last 2 days. And so it's been very just like keep going, keep going. And I'll
Yeah.
have music in my ears and I just zone out because I don't have to really focus.
Mhm.
And that's if I am building a quilt, like that's my favorite part because I'm like, I know I can like, I'm done with like the fiddly bits and I can like get more done, but also be very like focused at the same time, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so essentially, if you have like a big life decision to make,
Hmm.
the first thing that you should do is walk in and start quilting, because what you're doing, okay, so there's this thing called heart math. And heart math, it helps you to connect like your breath, your thoughts, and your heartbeat. So in doing that, okay, think about like your brain waves are just going like this.
Hmm.
And then when you're able to connect those, so I always have this little meditation that I do with people to help um, them be aware of their heartbeat, help them think of a thought of gratitude, think of their heart space, all of that, right? You're
Hmm.
able to kind of slow down those brain waves to where it actually, you become in a state of coherence, which is where you should make your decisions. And so think of any type of meditative state, whether I like crocheting. And so it could be crocheting and it could be quilting, whatever that is. When you are taking the problem out of your head as like, I need to solve this, and you're just present,
Hmm.
all of a sudden, all of this wisdom comes into your mind of like, it makes so much sense. But it's almost like when you try to figure things out, you actually block the answer. And
Hmm.
so that's what that's the advice I would give to anybody, is that any big decision you have, go in and do the thing that makes you the most calm.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that because it gives me an excuse to quilt more.
Right.
But also I feel that because I think too, like at least what I've experienced is like when I have a big decision to make, and I think like I probably, in hindsight, I can look back and go, oh, I knew the answer, but I was just scared of it. And so I was
Hmm.
trying to come up with other solutions around that instead of the actual solution that was going to get me to where I wanted to be with that situation. And then it's like, yeah, anytime I was like, coming out of a cold plunge or like working out or doing something that's like clears my mind of everything else. And then it's like it pops in and I'm like, all
I
right.
knew it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
knew it. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You have that feeling of like, oh, it's been there this whole time. Um,
Yeah.
so it just kind of, and I think it like feeds itself more and more because I find that the more I like do mindfulness or meditative things, like personally, feel like I'm more in sync with myself too, because I'm giving my brain that like resting time instead of trying
Right.
to always be overthinking and putting it in overdrive of like,
Mhm.
must solve all the world's problems right now.
Yeah. I once heard someone say that if caterpillars had human brains, we wouldn't have butterflies.
Mm,
because essentially they'd be sitting in, in the chrysalis and being like, I don't know, I'm not doing anything, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not producing, this isn't making me money.
Hmm.
And then, but so much transformation happens in that stillness.
Yeah.
And so, and people really are uncomfortable with that stillness. And so, even with considering like hobbies like quilting, crocheting, like all of these things, you, in a sense, are kind of tricking yourself into stillness. You're like tricking yourself because you're being productive, right?
Right. Hmm.
But you're also it's something repetitive or something that you're used to doing. And so you're tricking yourself into being in that um, kind of like cocoon in that sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it is hard to just sit still. Like
Mhm.
when you know that there's things you want to accomplish or you feel like you have to accomplish to be valuable. And that's a thing I've had to fight like hardcore, especially like I think there's like a level of that just owning a business. And I'm sure you can feel that too, because you've got your own practice that you're the boss. And so you have all the hoops to jump through and to make sure that it's like running well and legally and correctly and that
Mhm.
you're serving your clients well and so that feeling of like I need to have everything like perfect, all my t's crossed, all my i's dotted on top of like all the conferences you probably want to go to and all the continuing ed you have to do and
Right.
for me, it's like, classes I want to take, different skills I want to learn, but I'm like, okay, but I'm also making quilts for people. And I don't have really time for that. And, but I need to keep making money. And if I don't, then, it's like this whole circus going on at all times. And so it can be really hard to remember to like stop and take that time. Even though I'm quilting, I think sometimes there also needs to be an intention of like coming into it and going, you know what, I'm going to let this be a calming space right now instead of like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I got to get this done. And then I have to try to start this other thing. And like half start so many things because I'm like trying to get everything done at once instead of just like
Yeah.
finishing one thing and then moving to the next.
Yeah. And that's how you start to burn out and start hating what you're doing, right? Is
Mhm.
because you're like, it stops being something that you are moving towards and starts to be something that you have put a value on but not in a way that can be value to your soul, but more so of like, oh, I need to produce. And the more that I do, the more people will see that I am worthy of all of
Mhm.
these things. And, but we're constantly raising the bar. Like when it comes, especially with, I mean, like in owning your own business, like high achieving. And it's like, okay, but look at how far you've come. And yet you're like, oh, but the bar's up here now. And I haven't quite made it there yet. And
Yeah.
so there's always something more that we feel we have to do.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I've noticed when it comes to work is that actually following the path of least resistance tends to be the right path for me. And I end up it's almost I always see it as like I'm actually like moving towards it, something I'm super excited about. So whenever I started getting interns,
Hmm.
one of the things that happened was their advisor had to come to my office, check it out, make sure it was okay.
Yeah.
And we were having a conversation, and he said to me, I teach this class called Counseling Skills. Would you ever be interested in helping? Like I ask people around town if they'll help. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, yes. Like, and I had no idea I wanted to do that so bad until you just asked me. And
Hmm.
I'm so excited about it. Yes, please tell me when it's happening. And that is when when your whole body is like, yes, this sounds great.
Hmm.
That is when you move into the next step, whatever that is. And so it's okay to be still and go through the motions of life. No, as long as you're willing to trust those feelings when they come up, you're going
Hmm.
to be as productive as you need to be. And it's just going to be the path of least resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I always like Abe and I have always kind of felt like, we've had hard time. Like we've been together for almost 17 years. So it's like it's been a long time. We raised two boys and his sons together and with their moms. And it's just been a whole thing and great and lovely. But there's been hard moments and just, nothing's perfect ever for anybody. So don't let them fool you. But anyway, but like we always can look back and go, oh, we were fighting this thing so hard, but when we like let go of it and let things like we went in the direction that was the path of least resistance in that situation, it ended up working out to be the right thing and
Yeah.
the thing that led us down the next path that we needed to be on. And that's why I tell them, like, when things are hard, like when things are like feel like we're butting up against a wall or like we can't find a solution for something, that's exactly when I know like we're not on the right path. Like we need to like pivot and adjust and do something
Yeah.
different because we're like we're barking up the wrong tree. And then it's like we make, it might even just be a tiny simple switch or like change in mindset even, or just something,
Right.
one small change, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're back at it, and then everything
Yeah.
seems to work out. And it's not that things aren't hard fought or that you don't earn things or work for them or whatever, that's still there. But I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, if
It's
your life is
different.
so hard, then
Hmm.
baby, calm down. Like,
Yeah. Well, so
take a breath.
I see it in this differently than I used to, where I used to think that if it's because I work very hard, and to the point where I'm like, but it's when I'm working hard based on something that I think I should be working hard at, or it's different than when I'm like so excited about something. And if I'm
Hmm.
so excited about that thing, I'm like working harder than I've ever worked before, but it doesn't feel like work. So that's the difference
Yeah.
between um, when it comes to like, you don't have to just work for the sake of working so that other people can see how hard you work. It's more of, I'm going to work because I can't get enough of this.
Yeah.
Um, there's this quote that I love. Do you mind if I share
Yeah.
it with
Please
you?
share. Yeah.
Um, so this quote is one of my favorite quotes. It says, the master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he is always doing both. So
Oh,
I love that because it really does talk about the importance of like moving towards creativity, because that
yeah.
creativity it could be what you end up doing and for work, and when you love it, and you never, when they say like, do what you love and you never work a day of your life. And then
Yeah.
that's really hard for people to fathom.
Hmm.
However, I feel as though when you start to take a moment to listen to what feels good in your body, what feels not what feels good in your mind or what you think other people will think is really cool, but you
Yeah.
actually start to move in the direction that feels exciting, then you end up finding whatever it is that you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think I definitely experienced that like with teaching. I did, I got my degree and it took me a really long time, but I did it. And, I was so proud of myself because, previously, like I was, I'm the only sibling. I'm the only sibling in my family that actually got a college degree. I'm like, is it really is that true? Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and before that, like my dad went to college late. Like we were already, bigger kids, like 11, 12 when he started. And he graduated the year before I did from college. So, like, it's not like a huge, huge thing in the family in my family of like going to college. Like lots of people have, but it just isn't as like, it's not like every single one of my siblings went and every single, my parents and my aunts and uncles, it was not a
Mhm.
big. So I felt like this, the oldest daughter, like pressure to like go to college and be the best at what I'm doing. And, you know, got eventually started getting my master's degree because I was like, okay, I finally found something I loved, the idea of like integrating technology into the classroom and teaching kids at an early age how to use it as a tool instead of just a novelty and a toy because that's just how it gets treated. And then people are mad, like, "What? I can't believe these kids don't know how to use a computer." It's like, I mean, they still have the same human brain you do. You had to learn how, they just have to be taught. And once they're
Right.
taught, then they know.
Mhm.
And anyway, so I did that. And then like the COVID lockdowns happened and I was like feeling more and more stressed about my job. And then that happened. And that was like even more stress because my school didn't stop. Like we kept our kids in, we sent everybody home with laptops and they were like, okay, start teaching online. And I was like, wow, we've never done this before, but we're just expected to like completely change our whole entire careers like
Right.
on our own and figure it out ourselves. And that doesn't happen, right? Like unless you get lots of training and it's sanctioned by the school board and da da da. Like there's this whole thing, but this they were just like, nope, just wing it, figure it out.
Yeah.
And and I just started realizing like through therapy, because I was like going through still going through therapy that whole time because I was like not happy. Things were not going well. And my mom was running the business while I was teaching, and all I could think about was quilting and like wishing I was there with her working on quilts. And then it just came down to like, I've tied my entire identity to teaching. I've tied my entire like future on this thing that I am hating so much.
Mm.
It's literally making me physically sick. Like I was
Yeah.
not well. And and with the business, and I just like kept running into the same kind of relationship dynamics with my teacher, you know, like teaching team and all that stuff. And so Abe was finally just like, what if you just like did the business full time with your mom? And I was like, it doesn't make enough money. He's like, yeah, but just think about if she's making, you know, a certain amount of money or whatever. He's like, and then you join, you can like double or triple that because there's two of you instead of just one of you. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like I at least know basic principles of
Mhm.
business to like know that that's how that works. And
Yeah.
so we talked about it for months, and I talked about it with my therapist, and she's like, "Are you just jumping ship because things are hard, or is this something that you really want to do?" Because she calls me out, like
Mhm.
a good therapist should. She's like, "Is this more of your bullshit?" And I'm like, "No, this is for real."
Yeah.
So thankfully, I had her as a resource to really talk it out with, and obviously, Abe's always in my corner, so he's just like, whatever you want to do, babe. Like you can make it happen. I believe in you. If this is something you want to do, then we'll figure it out. And so, and then, yeah, like through all that therapy and through all that talking, and just like realizing, like, oh, I went and got a degree and I did this because I felt like I was supposed to. That's what I was supposed to do. And I had to like make my family proud of me. And so I had to do this thing to earn that. And
Yeah.
it's not just freely given, which isn't true, but you know, that's how I felt. That's what I
Right.
thought. And so,
Like a deep inherent belief that we have somehow have to earn love. And so,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So just that like struggle with feeling like where are my values and like who even am I? Like I didn't know myself. And
Mhm.
so that was a whole journey in and of itself. And then but like you're saying, like I would get so excited when I think about or look at or talk about quilting, and I was filling my free time with it and started testing patterns for pattern designers and like doing all this extra stuff on the side because I just really wanted to be in it all the time. And I was like, oh, that's probably what I should do then.
Yeah. I mean, essentially you were working that entire time, every time you're researching something, looking at patterns, like you were working.
Mhm.
But at the time you just thought it was fun.
Yeah.
And so if this is, I think that's a great example of like how you can start to notice those types of things. And money is such a big thing that we put in there as a barrier. And
Mhm.
so, yes, money can be a barrier. And I know that it's not necessarily, and people aren't necessarily in the situation where they can just be like, forget my job. I'm just gonna do what
Yeah.
I love. However, I think it's a great place to start when you think about hobbies or things that just bring you joy, because
Mhm.
either way, um, you're filling up essentially, so that you can go work this job that you're not like crazy about, but I have this when I go home, and that's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I always think about like people I know, women
Mhm.
especially have a difficult time with hobbies at times because maybe their significant other have like a million hobbies, and they're like, you should get a hobby. And
Mhm.
it's not always as simple as like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just go get a hobby. If you have small kids, or if you feel like you have a lot of pressure at home, there's all sorts of things bombarding you saying like, no, you have like laundry to do. You have to keep this house running. You have to take care of these kids, like all of these pressures. So if having a hobby feels like just more work. And so
Yeah.
part of when it comes to mental health and when people come in to see me,
Hmm.
my goal is to try and help them find something for themselves, because nobody's going to give it to them. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to say, hey, you deserve some time for yourself.
Yeah.
They have to actually take it. But they might, it doesn't always have to be like a heavy thing where they have to quarrel with their husband, or, sometimes the husband's like, yeah, no, I want you to do that.
Hmm.
But there's so much guilt associated with doing something for yourself sometimes as a woman.
Yeah.
And so being able to take some time to really foster what lights you up is intimidating. And it's like, well, I just don't know if I have time to do this. Or when I'm doing it, I feel guilty. So what's the point? I'd rather protect myself from feeling guilty
Hmm.
than actually pursuing this. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a
I
big one.
think, yeah, that idea of like women's work holds less value, I think really impacts the even just the quilting world itself. It's like, even though it's a huge industry and there's tons of us who own businesses and run them successfully in all avenues, whether it's a fabric shop or what I do, which is, long arm quilting for people and helping them finish their quilts,
Mhm.
it's like hard to remember that, like, no, I'm running a business. This isn't just a silly little thing. Or like, even if it is just my hobby, quote unquote, just not a business, but the thing I do just for joy, it's, yeah, that nagging kind of voice in the back of your head of like, you're not doing enough. Like, it's your job to run this household, when it's like there's zero pressure coming from my my roommates, right? My husband and my kids, or if you've,
Yeah.
your spouse or significant other, it's like, and I know there are some dynamics where it is hard because a person's significant other is not supportive, and that's a different story. But
Mhm.
if it's like, if that's the voice in your own head and that's what you're hearing, then that's like an inside job, right?
Yeah.
And that it's so hard to get over that sometimes and feel like, oh, I need to, and I feel that way sometimes. I'm like in my studio working. I'm literally doing a job that I'm being paid for from someone because they've hired me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to get inside. I need to do laundry. I need to do dishes. I'm like, no, my husband is playing video games. I'm going to text him and tell him that he better start running some laundry while he's also playing games. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, and so I told you about that book, Artist Way.
oh yeah. Hmm.
And so it's a book. Let's see, who is it by? The Artist Way by Julia Cameron.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and one part of that book, she talks about having an artist date
Oh,
each week.
okay.
So 1 hour a week where you do something for yourself. So maybe it's going to a coffee shop, maybe it's going to the museum, maybe it's walking in the park, but it's something to just create time for yourself. And she also cautions against inviting anybody into it, like
Mm.
to try and join you. This should just be by yourself. So one day I tried it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is going to be great. And I guilted myself the entire time of like all the things that I should be doing instead of
Mhm.
taking this time for myself. And I realized that the reason why I don't do it is because I am that person I just talked about, that I guilt myself for
Mhm.
doing it. And so part of it is being willing to do it and sit with the discomfort of what that guilt feels like. But
Mhm.
here's the thing about guilt. It's for the purpose of guilt is so that you can recognize something that's against your values, something that you did wrong that you would like to make right in the future. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Like my kids were at school, my husband was working. Like I was literally just took a couple hours off work to do
Mhm.
this. And yet I still felt that guilt. So it wasn't guilt. So we have to start calling it something different.
Mhm.
We call things guilt because we need to have labels and that makes sense. But essentially what it was this uncomfortable feeling of putting myself first, because I was
Mhm.
always told that that is selfish. And so even in
Mhm.
a situation in which nobody else was impacted, I still had that belief that putting myself first in any way is selfish. And so
Yeah.
I think that that was a great exercise. And I would recommend for anybody to do is to take that 1 hour a week in order just to start to see like, what are the feelings coming up? And
Mhm.
essentially, you're going to be uncomfortable either way, whether you are working without a break or whether you give yourself an hour a week. So you might as well lean into the discomfort of trying to make things better and heal it as opposed to just running that same race over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel too like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but sometimes like what we associate as feeling guilty, like, oh, I feel guilty. It's actually like, if we're going to label things like maybe shame, like
Hmm.
there's shame because you feel like I'm not good. I didn't earn this. I don't deserve this. Like I'm breaking my value system. Like I'm not working hard enough or whatever. And like, as
Yeah.
you know, the eldest millennial daughter, that's like a huge loud voice in my head a lot. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, it's
So, so
pressuring.
if guilt is like is I feel or I feel bad.
Mhm,
Shame is you are bad or I am bad. And
mhm,
so it's almost this feeling of, like you said, I didn't earn this. Or
mhm.
how do I have the audacity to do something for myself? Because that must be selfish,
Yeah.
as opposed to just self care, essentially.
Mhm. Yeah. I think too, as women, like, I saw a quote that like floored me and I didn't even think about this. And I was like, well, I need to sit with it for a minute because just because I saw something on the internet doesn't mean that it's like absolute Bible truth, but still, like, not that the Bible's true, but anyway, I don't want to go there. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but it was like something like girls don't mature faster than boys. They're just punished for things that boys are allowed to do well into adolescence. So it's like punished out of them. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my jaw hit the floor. I was like, it's so true. Like stuff that I would get in trouble for my brother, who's just a year younger than me, wouldn't. Or
Mm-hmm.
like say watching my nieces and nephew. Like it's just like, okay, yeah, that makes so much sense. And so I think there's shame built into girls and women so young, starting so
Yeah.
much younger than like any little boys maybe start to feel it. And I know boys they have their own thing and that's like a whole thing. And I'm not
Right.
anti-man, so I don't want anybody to think that. I think that there's bigger factors at play and it's a whole societal thing. Like we
Yeah.
are doing everybody dirty, but
Well, the amount of women that I see that feel as though um, that they aren't able to speak up for themselves, or
mhm,
they're afraid if they are assertive that they're going to be seen in a bad light. And
mhm,
even if what they say isn't bad at all, there's still this like, I don't know if I can speak up and say this, because then
mhm,
it's almost like this, I put myself as a target then. And so
mhm,
I can just blend into the background, nobody can see me, and that'll be just fine.
yeah,
Um, but at
yeah,
some point, and so it's terrifying to step out, but at some point it's almost like it gets too uncomfortable to not
mhm,
say anything. And
mhm,
so I love working with people, trying to help them find their voice and find how I love being being able to speak in an assertive and kind way. I think that's incredibly important. And also to be willing to take up space
mhm,
and kind of share your voice with the people around you.
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something also that I've had to like face and learn and get better at dealing with that uncomfortable
Yeah.
feeling, owning a business and having boundaries in my business. It's been so uncomfortable. And but I'm also like I'm better for it. My business is better for it. And I know like other like quilty friends I have that I've interviewed on here that I just know through, the giant community on social media, but we have those conversations of like, I'm so sweaty. I have to tell this person this thing. And even though this is what my policy says, and it's like written right here, I still have to like reiterate it to this person. And it's making me so uncomfortable because there's a
Yeah.
fear there, like a
Hmm.
fear of being just like walked all over. And so it can be really tricky. But I think like, yeah, practicing taking time for yourself is
Yeah.
like, it gets easier, right? Like, maybe at
Mhm.
first it's really uncomfortable because you've not done it before, but it's just like with anything else you do. If the more you do it, the more you get practiced at it, the more you schedule it in and set time for it, the easier it gets to like approach that time with yourself.
Yeah. And you mentioned fear, and I always have this little like antidote with when I talk about fear, and I think of it like prudence and fear. So prudence is like, well, the example that I was told was it's like seeing a sign that said ice skating or thin ice, no ice skating,
Mm,
and you say, okay, I think I'm not going to go ice skating because there's thin ice. Fear is saying I'm never going ice skating ever because there could possibly be thin ice. And
mm,
so one thing that I've learned is that any decision that you make in fear will only lead to more lessons. And that's okay. So, like,
yeah.
maybe you don't tell that person. Like, maybe you have it in there and you're like, oh, I need to talk to them. I'll just let it slide this one time. And
Hmm.
then it happens again and again and again. And that's okay. That's
Hmm.
completely okay. Because every single time it's igniting a little bit of a fire in you to where
Yeah.
you're like, at some point, it's not going to be okay. And you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm actually not okay that this happened, or this is in the terms and agreements, or this is part of our contract, whatever that looks like.
Hmm.
Um, and you're going to have this fire behind you that you needed initially. And so it's completely okay if you let it fly. Just know it's going to lead to more discomfort and more lessons
Yeah.
until
It's just
you,
gonna,
you can't do it anymore.
yeah. It's just
Yeah.
gonna keep coming up over and over again because you're not changing anything about the behavior or like the cycle that got you to that place in the first place, right? Like that's how I feel like if I keep coming up against something, I'm like, ugh, I'm like avoiding the thing that would stop this, but I'm scared of the outcome, or I'm
Mhm.
scared of how the other person's going to react. And so I've been like people pleasing and like placating and just ignoring the thing that I need to actually face. And then when I
Yeah.
do face it and I'm like assertive but kind and clear,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, that actually went fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now this
Mel
person can
Robbins.
respect my boundaries.
Yeah. Mel Robbins talks about that. She talks about sugarcoating, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so sugarcoating things for people, she says, you're essentially lying to them because
Yeah.
you're afraid to absorb the reaction. But
Mhm.
here's the thing, you actually don't have the responsibility to have to absorb their reaction.
Yeah.
Whatever people feel, that's on them. And I know it's still uncomfortable, right? Because
Right.
people can typically tell the energy of somebody, and that
Mhm.
feels very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But I think that that is just another lesson in the importance of being willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if you can get comfortable in that discomfort, and I think of it, I always explain it like doing a yoga pose and like relaxing into that difficult pose,
Mhm.
then you get stronger every single time
Yeah.
something like that comes up.
Yeah. No, that's good. And that's good to remember that too, because yeah, it is uncomfortable. But I think the again, yeah, like you were saying, the more you practice at it, the easier it gets to like breathe into that and like get settle into that discomfort of like, yeah,
Hmm.
but also I'm a badass now and I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
I
And
might
you
not
feel like
like
I can
it.
take up space and this is okay. It's
Yeah.
okay for me to be paid for what I did
Mm,
and to recognize my value. If somebody doesn't want to pay what I'm asking, that's okay. They don't have to, because the
mhm,
people who pay for what I give, they're going to be excited to have it.
mhm.
And so that's my clientele. Those are my customers.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I preach this to people all the time, but then I'm like, I'm so scared. Please pay me, you know?
Yeah.
And thankfully, like again, because I keep practicing and I keep facing that like thing, it has gotten a lot easier for me, thankfully. But it was so hard at first. And there were so many times where like my mom and I kind of ended up in situations where we both were like, shit. Because we were like, something got missed in communication or something wasn't very clear because we were kind of like nervous to put it out there. But
Yeah.
now I'm just like, I'm so upfront with people and I'm so just like, this is what it costs. Like, this is an approximate. I try to overestimate so that hopefully I can charge you less, but at the same time, every project is there. It's not like I'm making the same cookie cutter thing every single time, so then it's
Right.
like, but I have to be okay with that. Like I have to be okay. I have to know my value and trust my value in myself. And that's so hard. But
You
um
know, there's something really kind though about being very upfront with your pricing,
mhm,
because there's this it's almost like here it is, you can choose to or you don't have to, and that's completely it's okay if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But then they know exactly what to expect. And when they make that choice moving forward, it's empowering for them and it's empowering for you because they're not worried about hidden costs or things that are um, that might come up last minute. So
Yeah.
the more direct that you are, it's really you're doing a service for that person as well. And so it's not only kind for you, it's kind for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that gets missed a lot is like we hear about being nice, but we don't really learn how to be kind and that being clear and being honest and not just like honest, not like brutal honesty to the point where you're just hurting people's feelings because you're like saying every observation that comes into your head, but just like
Right.
facing a situation where communication is warranted and needed and you're yeah, being clear about yourself. And I think it's oh yeah, Brene Brown, she always says being clear is being kind.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's
Thank you, Brene,
yeah, thank
because
you.
we really needed that. Yeah.
Yeah. And kindness and Abe and I talk about it a lot too because I'm like, you're always taught as like especially a little girl being raised conservative, like be nice, be nice, be nice. And so that just means like make sure you're being a people pleaser and placating everybody around you and that you're
Mhm.
not making too much noise, you're not being too rambunctious, you're basically keeping your mouth shut and standing there to look pretty.
Mhm.
And so like the concept of like nice versus kind, like it doesn't really make a lot of sense because what you're being told is niceness or kindness is just like so dissonant and so weird. And so the idea that like kindness is actually like the truth, it's the truth and it's coming from a place of love, not like, I don't like your hair today, but
Mhm.
like your behavior is impacting me and I'm going to tell you because I need you to know because and if you're aware then there's something we can do about it. But if I never
Mhm.
say anything because I'm trying to be nice, then I just end up hurting our relationship because I'm not giving you the opportunity to work with me to fix this.
Mhm. So
And
I always run it through this like filter. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
mm,
And so if it's true, let's say it's true, right? Is it kind? Well, that depends, right? We don't know. Sometimes, I mean, it could be kind. You can say it in a clear way, but is it necessary? So if I don't share this with them, is that going to impact our relationship or what they have, their view of the situation or whatever? And
yeah,
so I feel as though the necessary part is kind of like the tiebreaker when it
yeah,
comes to things.
yeah,
It might be
for sure.
necessary for your relationship to share it. It might be necessary for your well-being to stick with that boundary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think in business, it's a discernment too of like knowing how much you need to share with a client versus how much, like, what's the balance of like what they need to know that's going to help them hold up their end and communicate with them what you're going to do as well, but like not oversharing or not like reading them the riot act, like just because something got lost in translation or miscommunicated. And
right.
it's a tricky balance, but um okay, we've bounced all over the place, which I
Yeah.
love, and that's like the nature of this podcast. That's why I say it's like a slightly chaotic podcast because this always happens, but it's great, and I'm like loving our conversation. But I do want to just like touch back on like, um, so kind of like leaning back into the idea of like the discomfort, and so because so many people view their hobby and their craft and specifically quilting on this show but as like a mindfulness or a therapeutic activity, how much I guess this is where I waffles. So I guess I'll just talk about myself. But sometimes I feel like I make a lot of the same thing over and over again because it's familiar and it's easy. But then there comes a point where I'm like, how soon am I going to get bored? And like finding that balance of like looking for things or learning new skills that make me uncomfortable because I don't know them yet, or trying something that's new because it's like whatever. Like, I guess, do you have like a rule or maybe just like a guidance about how often somebody might want to look into like growing a skill growing their skills for that hobby, or is
Yeah.
there any tried and true?
Well, this kind of reminds me, and I might go off topic a little bit, but it reminds me of the study they did where they took a class, and on one side, like half the class, they told them, "You're really smart."
Mm,
In the other class, they said, "Wow, you worked really hard." And so what they found was those individuals who were told they were really smart tended to, they wouldn't start things if they
mm,
didn't know how to complete it all the way through. And whereas the side of the class that was told you worked really hard, they didn't really care what it was because they knew they were going to have to work their way through it.
mm,
And no matter what it was, they were going to figure it out. It just took some time. So I
yeah.
think whenever you might do the same pattern over and over again, and you might find that it's easy for you right now. And then you might look at something and be like, I've never done that before. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. And there's this fear that's kind of associated with not being able to do it perfectly the first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you start to find that you're shying away from things because you're worried about not doing it perfectly,
Mhm.
that's when you have to go in and just like mess it all up and just fail miserably, because that's part of like the growth mindset, right?
Mhm.
Is this idea that you're willing to fail as many times as you need and get excited every single time you fail, because now you're learning a different way of doing it. Because if you think about everything that you've done so far, like when it comes to quilting, you had to start somewhere of not knowing anything.
Yeah.
And so it's by challenging yourself. And I think we talked about prudence and fear.
Hmm.
And I always, I think that it's important to lean into that fear. If you start to note, if you say like, okay, I could probably die, then yes, let's go ahead and just like stop that. We're not going to do
Yeah.
that. But if it's like, I just don't know if I'm going to be any good at it, or I've never done it before, this feels really challenging, I'm just, oh, I'll put it off. Um, then I'm going to ask you to lean into it. And the more that you do, the more you start to find the parts about it that are easier, the parts that are difficult. And then you can start to just move through that process. But wanting to mess up is, I
Mhm.
think, the best mentality you can have going into it. Did that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, as like I was saying, like when I early started quilting there, I didn't start just making like sewing basic squares together. Like I was like, go big or go home. Um, I made a quilt pattern and I made a twin size quilt. Like I was not going to make a small quilt. And so a lot of times people start, and I encourage people to start if they've never done it before, like just get some pre-cut squares and just sew them together, and then you can find somebody or look at tutorials, and then you can learn how to cut fabric because there's a specific way to do it, to square it up, make sure everything's nice and straight and accurate and all that. But they're just like, when you're learning, of course, you're like, okay, I've never done any of this. So all of it's new. So it almost kind of feels like it's not that big of a leap. But I think for me, once I kind of got down a few basic like block structures, I just like stuck with that for such a long time because I was like too scared to mess up another pattern. Because if you're buying new fabric, quilting cotton is expensive. It's like
Oh, yeah.
$14 a yard. It's not cheap. And so, well, it was cheaper back then, but now it's like it's at that point. And so when you're investing in this fabric to make something, it's like if you cut it wrong or if you end up not liking the pattern or there's like kind of all this feeling of like, I don't want to mess this up. And
Hmm.
so it gets brought up too in the quilting world, like just use the good fabric because so many people stash fabric away because they're scared to cut into it. And then they're like, I hate this now. I would never use this now. But they sat on it because they were too scared to cut it when it was new and cool and exciting. And I'm definitely guilty of that. So I just didn't
And
know like if there's kind of a balance of like, or like, are there, telltale signs for people that they can kind of notice if they, if it's no longer like calming and exciting or they're avoiding it because it's boring. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking, I guess.
Mhm. Well, I think, I mean, like what you just said, like if you're avoiding it, I think that that's a clear indication that there's something about it that is making you feel like if it's something that once brought you joy and it no longer brings you joy, it's just that project in the corner that's like, oh, hey, remember me? Like, remember
Mhm.
you were doing stuff with me? Then that becomes the indication of like, what am I so afraid of? And
Yeah.
so my question for somebody who is afraid of cutting into new fabric would be, tell me like, where does that fear come from? Like, is it because in the past you were told that if you waste this, then, like you aren't, you're going to be in trouble if you waste this, or look at how much
Mhm.
money you spent on this and then you're just going to throw it away. So there's all of these old beliefs that we have that come from whether it be childhood or even the scarcity mindset of,
Mhm.
if I cut into this and I ruin it, then all of a sudden there's no more fabric in the world because I've spent all this money on this and I can't spend any more money on it.
Yeah.
So it's more of, how do we start to embrace some of the mistakes as, yes, I call it like a learning tax. So I've
Mm.
made so many mistakes in my business to where I'm like, oh, look, another learning tax that I'm just money I'm not going to see.
Mhm.
And although it's not fun, I also want people to recognize that money, it it comes and goes. It's no longer I'm spending money. I'm like circulating the money because it's always going to come back to you in some way, and you do
Yeah.
spend it. And think of the amount of time that you put into something, um, and being able to do something new with
Mm.
this skill that you've already have and you're excited about it. Like that's worth so much more money than the amount that you spent on that cloth
Yeah.
fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cloth, it's
Thanks.
fabric, it's material. It is what it is. Again, labels, right?
Mhm.
Um, okay, yeah, that's a good point because I think, yeah, I was kind of in a rut of like I was avoiding it for a while too. Like, and I think sometimes I do avoid sewing for myself because I'm like, I've been making other people's stuff for so long that I need a break from it altogether. And so even though I've been excited about making a quilt or making a bag or something that I wanted to do for myself, like I think that part of having a business that is also my hobby is like a little bit tricky, but
Mhm.
that's like a different conversation of like monetizing your hobby, but that's like the quintessential like millennial way to get through life. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And when it comes to like we talked about like the beliefs that you practice, like
Mhm.
what are the beliefs there? Like when it comes to having to make money off of the things that you want to do for fun. Like it's an interesting belief, right? Like almost I think about all the certifications and things that I've accumulated. And the
Mhm.
reason why I've allowed myself to do it is because I always had like a business plan for it.
Mhm.
It couldn't just be for the fact that I just wanted to do it. And
Right.
and it's weird how we do that. But I think the more that we start to recognize that I actually don't have to have a reason, I can just do this and I don't have to make any money from it. Um, if I do, cool. That can be really freeing when you think about. I know some people who've gotten into businesses based on their hobby and they're like, I just can't do it anymore. I don't want to take another picture. I don't want to do this activity anymore. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess with saying that, it's for the people who just want to do it, it's okay to just do it and not have to make a penny from it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You don't have to justify making money from something just to like have it in your life. And
right.
that's a hard that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. Like, you mean I can just sit here and do this because I want to? It's like, yeah, you can actually.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
You're allowed to enjoy your life. It doesn't all have to be monetized.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so tricky though. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just different. But like you said, it's like, yeah, where did that come from? Where did that voice or that idea come from that you keep alive by perpetuating it, by listening to it and like what law is it that says you have to like experience your life that way? And
Mm-hmm.
for some people it is their value to make money and to, whatever, but for some people it's not. And I think that can be for me, like crafting was hard too when I didn't know myself as well because I was trying to keep up with like other people or like do as much as other people. And then I was always comparing myself to them as far as like, oh, I'm not making as many quilts, or I need to buy that brand new fabric because everybody else has it. And it's that kind of fitting in feeling versus feeling the sense of belonging within the community because I bring something unique to it.
Hmm.
And the more I've gotten to like know myself and understand who I am and why I like to create and what I like to create, that gets easier. I don't feel so like stressed to buy every new fabric line that comes out and every, it's like, because there's constantly new fabric lines being released. And they're cute and they're great and they're beautiful. And I would love to have the time and attention and 57 versions of myself to be able to use all of it. But no, there's not a single human on this planet that could. so,
Right. Yeah.
so I think like settling into who I am as well has helped me get focused on that and like not feel the need to hoard fabric quite so much. Sometimes it's hard to let go of, but
Yeah.
because it's so pretty and I just want to touch all of it.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, definitely been a practice of like, for me anyway, for like self-discovery and practicing showing myself grace too when I do make mistakes because I'm really hard on myself. And
Yeah.
and I
And
think
that
I'm
was,
in that boat of like I was told so much, oh, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. But like out of that, I didn't learn how to work hard until I was in college. Like I didn't learn how to like work for my grades or work for anything really until I was like well into adulthood. And so,
that's when you start to find people struggling with like their identity of like, okay, well, I was always told I was smart, but now this isn't coming as easy anymore. And that's terrifying because their worth always came from being smart or doing things perfectly. And
mhm,
that perfectionism that comes in with most tasks of like, I want to be perfect. I want people to see that I deserve to be here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you don't have to justify it to anybody. But that's a hard lesson to remember. But anyway, oh man, I don't know. I feel like we've covered so many things,
Mhm.
but I do want to ask, as we kind of wrap up here, like if you have a tip or if there's something that we did touch on, but that you want to reiterate, like a tip or a piece of advice for the quilters listening and
Yeah. So this is actually kind of advice I give every single client when leaving, and it depends on what they come in for, right? So I want you to insert here, so I would say between now and the next time I see you, I want you
yeah.
to expand your awareness around the discomfort. I want you to expand your awareness around what it feels like when you mess up, or expand your awareness around the guilt that you feel when you do something for yourself.
Mhm.
The more that you expand your awareness, you don't have to do anything. And I'm always like, you don't have to change anything. Don't change anything. Just expand your awareness. And when you do that, you're it's almost like you can't help but not change because you
Mhm.
know too much, right? You expand your awareness, then you notice it every single time you do it. If you apologize all the time, you're going to notice that you're apologizing all the time. And then at some point, you're going to say sorry and you're going to be like, no, you know what? I'm not sorry. I'm not going to say that anymore.
Yeah.
And so you end up changing, but not because I told you to change or not because you have to make any sacrifice. It's because you know too much now. And so
Mhm.
now you have no other choice but to do things differently. And
Yeah.
so that would be my advice.
Oh, I love that. And I think it is so true. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Hmm.
And then you just annoy yourself. Like, at
Right.
least that's been my experience. Is like, I'm an apologizer. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. And, Abe's always like, why are you sorry? He's like, are
Yeah.
you really? I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. He's like, why'd you say it? I'm like, habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it makes it a lot easier to pull back too. And I love that for what it is, because you're right. I think it does make it easier to change those things. And it's things we want to change ourselves because we do start to see it and
Hmm.
probably wish we could change at on some level, but that's that awareness.
Yeah. And it's
Mm,
just, and noticing, like just notice what your body does. when you're feeling anxious, or what you're when you are feeling that discomfort, what are the things, what are the cues? And the more that you notice it, the more it stops being something that's like what's the term, like that you're blind
Mm,
about. It starts to be is okay, well, I'm separate from this. It's my body's doing this. My body is uh, my heart is pounding, or my palms are getting sweaty, and that's separate from me.
mhm,
And so you can start to see it as more of a physiological response, as opposed to I'm feeling anxious. This is everything's happening to me.
mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think so. I think in the sense of like feeling a sense of like lack of control of it. Like this, I just feel this way and I can't, there's nothing I can do to change it. This is what happens
hmm
versus like, oh, when you recognize those things, you can start to recognize that you're feeling a certain way and you can look at, again, expanding your awareness, like you're saying, of the situation. Like, why am I feeling this way?
right. Our feelings aren't facts.
Yeah. And just,
So yeah.
yeah, understanding like, oh, this person just started talking really loudly and that like triggered an
Hmm.
anxiety response, or like, oh, that whatever it is, it's like if you give yourself the space to like notice why, like what is going on around me that's causing these feelings, or even within your own self. Like I work
hmm
myself into a tizzy sometimes. I mean, I did
hmm
this morning. I was like down in my studio and I was working myself up and I gave myself a stomach ache. And then I came upstairs to like tell Abe something. I started sobbing and I was like, wow, I did this
hmm
to myself because I let myself get into this like anxiety spiral.
Yeah. And my
And
daughter, oh, I'm sorry.
no, go.
Oh, just it reminds me of my daughter. She came in one time before it was like when she was gonna be singing in this music or
Mhm.
thing. Afterwards she told me, she said, "Mom, my body was telling me that I needed to run." And I
Yeah.
was like, I love it that she described it like that, right? Like her body was telling her something. It didn't mean she needed to run. It didn't mean that anything was coming after her, but her
Mhm.
body, my heart was beating so fast, it was telling me that I needed to run. And
Oh.
it's a great way to look at something, right? It's separate from me. It's just my body doing its job, trying to protect me. And I
Mhm.
can appreciate that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It gives you a whole new perspective on like, at least for me, like the control I do have in my life and the choices I do have and the free will that I have in, amongst all of it. And I know that that can be like a touchy subject for some people, but that's what it feels like to me. Is like now that I know, because my awareness is so much bigger now and I can see more moving parts and I can see how different interactions affect me and like, oh, my body's just trying to keep me safe because of XYZ. Like I have more decisions I get to make instead of just being like,
mhm,
all this stuff keeps happening to me. Like these
mhm,
people are mean to me or this situation keeps happening. It's like, oh, I know too much now. I can't just
mhm.
like let it slide and be that anymore. It's like, no, I get to be a bigger decider in my life than what I previously thought. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for having this chat. I
Thank you.
was just like excited to talk to you. And I was telling Abe, I was like, I want to like tell people about, Humble Heart in some way. Like we could run an ad. I don't know if like you could talk to Stephanie to see like what we could do. And he was like, well, what if you interviewed her? And I was like, heck yeah, that'd be so fun because
Yeah,
like
I'm
I
so
said,
grateful.
it
Yeah.
comes up so much. And I'm like, well, what if we just hear from an actual counselor?
I really appreciate you having me on, because I feel as this is me leaning into discomfort of some at times to be like talking and filmed and all of that. So I do really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk about stuff I love. So
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And so we'll put your Instagram um link down below and I'll link the to the website for Humble Heart Counseling. And I know it's local for Boise, Idaho, but if anybody is local and listening,
yeah.
then you're a great resource to reach out to and you've got interns and
And I love playing matchmaker when it comes to people and counselors, because I know so many counselors here. So if anybody wants to reach out just to say like, hey, do you know anybody who would be good for me? I ask a couple questions, matchmake. So
ooh, I love that. That's so cool. And yeah, I think that's one thing too. That's like give yourself time to find the right counselor for you because
mhm,
counselors are just human beings too. And not everybody's
absolutely.
energies are going to vibe. And, you know, If the first one doesn't work out, then your counselor should be a good resource to help you find someone that can work with you. So
Yeah. And I know so many amazing counselors, so happy to share
awesome.
them. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And hopefully we'll actually get to meet in person sometime
that would
soon.
be great. I would
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. Me too. All right. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.